Welcome to Gambit Underground, where forgotten legends rise, the board is a battlefield, and every move hides a motive. This isn't your typical chess podcast. We tell the hidden stories, the lost brilliancies, and the human struggles behind the game's greatest moments. From blood-stained boards to brilliant escapes, we go beyond ELO. To uncover what really happened, subscribe to the companion newsletter for deep dives, bonus lore, and exclusive games analysis. This is Gambit Underground. Let's begin.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really focusing in on Mir Sultan Khan, an absolutely captivating figure in chess history, both for his life story and, well, his pretty unique way of thinking about the game.
Yeah, definitely. If you follow chess history, his name probably rings a bell. And for good reason.
Exactly. I mean, here's someone who climbed the ranks incredibly fast, right? Coming from a different chess background, almost straight into the top level.
Mm-hmm. And he brought this style that often seemed to ignore the standard rules.
And that's what we want to zero in on today. That this fascinating, sometimes really bold use of the centralized king. Surprisingly effective at times, too.
It's quite a story. You have to imagine a player steeped in Indian chess traditions suddenly playing Western chess against the world's best.
So he learned in India, Sargodha specifically.
That's right, yeah. That's where his talent was first really noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sir Umar Tawana, who had this idea of building a strong chess team, took him under his wing.
And brought him to England under quite unusual circumstances, from what I understand.
Yes, very much so. Patronage, basically. It wasn't like a modern pro sponsorship.
Okay, so picture this. Sultan Khan lands in England. Whole new chess scene. And almost right away, people are noticing his games are different.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a guy who just, time after time, seems to ignore that basic rule we all learn. King safety first, castle.
Right. Get the king tucked away.
But he often kept his king, right there in the middle of everything, sometimes even seemed to move it to the center on purpose.
And what's really interesting is that it doesn't seem like it was just him forgetting or being careless.
No.
In many games, he let the king stay central for a long time. And in some key ones, it looks like a deliberate choice, like, okay, the king stays here.
So what was the thinking behind that? I mean, it seems so risky.
Well, the idea, looking at his wins, seems to be about using the king actively, for defense, mostly.
Like guarding squares.
Exactly. Guarding key central squares, protecting important pawns directly with the king. So while shoring up his own position, he's also sort of subtly cramping his opponent,
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for us chess players, right? Seeing this actually work against top competition, like his famous game against Capablanca.
Oh, yeah, the Capablanca game. That's a
Yeah.
classic example.
Beating Capablanca is huge anyway, but how he did it really highlights this unique approach.
Absolutely. In that game, Khan got a better position, mainly because he built up this really strong pawn structure.
Okay.
And the key thing is the role his king played. It was right there in the center, anchoring those important pawns.
So Capablanca's trying to find weaknesses, presumably.
Right, probing around, looking for counterplay. But Khan's king is sitting there, defending crucial points, limiting couple options on the wings. It's not how you usually see the king used in the middle game, is it?
Not at all. It's usually hiding. So that's a great example of it working.
Yeah.
But it couldn't have always been successful, surely. That sounds inherently dangerous.
Oh, definitely not always successful. Which brings us to the game against Madison. That one gives a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
Well, on the face of it, it looks similar. Khan again puts his king in the center, seems confident it's doing a job there, controlling squares.
Meh.
But when you analyze it, you see that Madison actually had real chances to punish him.
Ah, okay.
He could have opened up the center, get the E-file or D-file open, create direct lines of attack right at Khan's king, stuck there uncastled.
So it was a bit of a gamble that time, one that could have backfired badly.
Exactly. It was risky. And maybe surprisingly, Madison didn't find those critical moves. He missed the opportunity.
Lucky break for Khan? Maybe.
Perhaps. And ironically, later in that same game, it was actually Madison's own king that got into trouble.
Wow. Okay, so it really shows how fine the line was. It depended a lot on the specifics, the position, and maybe the opponent not finding the refutation.
Precisely. Calculation, specific nuances. It wasn't a universally safe strategy by any means.
Now, what about the game against Volmy? I've seen that one mentioned as being quite instructive, especially about his endgame play.
Yes, the Volmy game is interesting because it looks like Khan was maybe aiming for an endgame quite early on.
Really, playing for the endgame from the start.
It seems that way sometimes, and
Yeah.
sources suggest he just had this deeper understanding of the king's role in the endgame,
Yeah.
especially compared to Volmy in that game.
How did that play out?
Well, they reached what looked like a pretty balanced, almost symmetrical position. But Khan's, let's say, strategic insight about where the king needed to be and when to move it, that proved decisive.
So even when things looked equal, his grasp of the king's central power in the endgame gave him an edge.
And then Black made a significant mistake, which allowed Khan's deeper endgame knowledge to shine through.
It really feels like in the endgame that central king transforms from a potential liability into a major asset.
Absolutely. That's a key shift in chess, isn't it? The king goes from needing protection to being a powerful piece itself. Khan seemed to have a great feel for that transition, maybe activating his king centrally even earlier than most would think is standard.
But, okay, we have to address the downside too. This central king thing, it wasn't always a winning formula.
No, definitely not. There were absolutely games where it went wrong, where the king became a target and, he lost because of it.
And people have speculated about why he had this tendency, right? Where did it come from?
Yeah, there's this interesting theory connecting it back to his roots in Indian chess.
How so? What's different there?
Well, traditional Indian chess doesn't have the initial two-square pawn move that we have in international or Western chess.
Ah, okay, so development is slower.
Generally, yes. The game unfolds more slowly, which means the center doesn't get blown open quite as quickly. So maybe the king could hang out in the center a bit longer without immediate danger in that version of the game.
That makes a lot of sense. So that early experience might have shaped his instincts, even when playing the faster Western game.
It's a plausible idea, that he carried over a different sense of king safety or timing.
Interesting connection.
But we also have to be fair and say sometimes his king probably just ended up in the center because of how the game developed, not necessarily as part of a grand plan from move one.
Right, out of necessity sometimes.
Exactly. And sometimes he managed those tricky positions incredibly well, but against the very, very best.
Yeah, leaving your king exposed is always playing with fire.
Which, naturally, brings us to Alexander Alekhine, the world champion, probably the toughest opponent he faced regularly.
Alekhine?
And it seems Alekhine was the one who really consistently figured out how to punish this central king strategy.
That's what the record shows, yes. Looking at their games, Khan just didn't have the same success with this approach against Alekhine.
Why not? What did Alekhine do?
Well, Alekhine was just a phenomenal attacker. So sharp, so imaginative. He seemed particularly good at spotting the cracks, the vulnerabilities when the king was in the center, especially in dynamic middle games.
So he could just break through. Yeah. There are some accounts of really brutal attacking games where Alekhine just dismantled Khan's position, often targeting that king. It's a stark reminder of the risks against someone of that caliber. Alekhine could just see how to generate those direct threats.
So, okay, we can admire the boldness and sometimes the brilliance of Khan's central king play,
For sure.
but it really hammers home the importance of basic king safety, doesn't it? Especially against top-tier attackers.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at Khan is fascinating. It shows alternative ways to think. But you wouldn't want to tell beginners, yeah, just leave your king in the middle.
No, definitely not.
Castling is fundamental for very good reasons. Khan's games are maybe a case study in exceptions and the risks you run rather than a new rule book.
Right. A unique approach, but not necessarily one to blindly copy.
Precisely.
Now, shifting gears a bit, his story didn't just end with his playing career in Europe. He had quite an impact back in Pakistan later on, didn't he?
He did, yeah. There was a big resurgence of interest in his legacy in Pakistan, particularly after about 1980.
Okay.
And you saw players emerge, like Mahmoud Lodi. He became an international master, dominated Pakistani chess for a long time, and was aiming for the GM title. Sultan Khan was definitely an inspiration there.
Like a symbol of what was possible.
Exactly, a symbol of Pakistani chess potential on the world stage, even though, developing chess infrastructure there has had its challenges. But the aspiration for future Pakistani grandmasters, that connects back to Sultan Khan being this pioneer.
So when we put it all together, what are the main things we should take away from this deep dive into Mir Sultan Khan for us as players or just fans of chess history?
Well, I think it shows him as this truly exceptional figure, doesn't it? an amazing life story combined with a really distinct way of playing chess.
Yeah, especially that intriguing, sometimes dangerous reliance on the central king.
Right. You see this raw talent, maybe shaped by his Indian chess background, leading to some incredible wins. But you also see the limitations or dangers when facing the absolute elite like Alekhine. It highlights the risks of straying too far from those core safety principles.
It's a really compelling story, and it does make you think, doesn't it, about how different chess cultures or early training might, influence how players approach strategy, and maybe whether these unconventional ideas, like Khan's king placement, can sometimes lead to surprising, even brilliant results. Perhaps looking back at these historical games gives us a bit of fresh perspective on the game today.
Absolutely. It reminds you that there's always more to explore, different ways to think about the board.
Well, thanks for digging into this fascinating player and his unique style with me today.
My pleasure. Always interesting to talk about Sultan Khan.
Thanks for going underground with us. If this story moved you, surprised you, or made you see the game in a new light, share it with a fellow chess addict. And don't forget, the full written chronicles, rare games, and extended commentary live at checkmatestries.substack.com. We're just getting started, and the next move is yours.